Hey there, deep divers. Ready for some seriously wild stories about what happens after people take DNA tests?
Oh, you mean beyond finding out you're 5% Viking?
Exactly. We're diving into an article called 10 Interesting Things That Happen to People After Taking a DNA Test. And let me tell you, some of these twists and turns, well, you just wouldn't believe.
I'm intrigued already.
So imagine this. Two women, Janine and Jen, adopted from South Korea, they grow up just miles apart.
Wow, that's crazy.
Right. But here's the kicker. They had no idea they were even sisters until, wait for it, 40 years later. A DNA test revealed the truth. Just makes you think, right? Like, how many connections are we missing out there?
It really makes you wonder about the hidden ties that bind us, doesn't it? DNA has this incredible power to redefine family in ways we never could have imagined.
It's like rewriting our family trees in real time, and sometimes those rewrites involve some pretty famous names, like Oprah Winfrey. She took a DNA test initially to explore her African roots, which totally makes sense.
Yeah, given her family history.
Right. But the results, they threw in a twist. Turns out she's got East Asian and Native American ancestry, too.
Talk about unexpected heritage. It really highlights the complexity of human migration and how DNA can reveal those hidden chapters in our family stories.
Speaking of unexpected chapters, have you heard about Sigrid Johnson?
I don't think so.
Well, get this. She grew up identifying as Black, raised by parents who also identified as Black.
Okay, so far, so normal.
Yeah, but then a DNA test revealed something totally different.
Oh, what was it?
Only 3% African ancestry. Turns out she was adopted as a child and had this whole mix of Middle Eastern, Hispanic, and European heritage.
Wow, that's a whole identity shift. It really makes you question how much of who we are is nature versus nurture.
Definitely makes you think. And then there are people who use DNA testing for more, well, immediate answers.
Immediate answers.
Yeah, like Christopher, he had some suspicions about his wife's fidelity.
Oh, this doesn't sound good.
So he decided to take a DNA test with his 15-year-old daughter, and, well, the results confirmed his fears.
I can't imagine how devastating that must have been. It's a stark reminder of the ethical complexities of DNA testing. It can bring truth, but sometimes that truth comes at a very high cost.
Yeah, some heavy stuff. But let's lighten the mood a bit, shall we?
Please.
Have you heard about Larry David, the comedian?
Of course. Curb Your Enthusiasm, right?
That's him. Well, he's always been super proud of his Jewish heritage.
Right.
So he takes a DNA test expecting, 100% European Jewish.
That makes sense.
But hold on, the results show he's actually 37% Native American.
No way. That's hilarious. It just goes to show how DNA can really challenge our assumptions about ourselves, even those things we feel so certain about.
Sometimes those DNA curveballs can even connect us to history, like actor Bill Paxton.
What did he find out?
While tracing his family tree for a TV show, he discovered his fourth great-grandfather was a spy during the American Revolution.
Wow, a real-life historical thriller. It's incredible how DNA can tie us to these pivotal moments in history, making the past feel so much more personal.
It really is amazing. But, as we've seen, not all DNA discoveries lead to heartwarming reunions or fascinating historical insights.
True.
Sometimes they uncover some unsettling truths. Like in the case of Jacoba Ballard. She knew she was conceived via sperm donor and started using DNA testing services to find half-siblings.
Okay. Sounds like a pretty standard search these days.
Right. But she quickly realized something was off. Like, seriously wrong. She was getting tons of matches, all linked to the same man, Donald Klein.
Who's Donald Klein?
Well, that's the crazy part. He was the fertility doctor at the clinic where her mother had been treated.
You're kidding.
Nope. He had been using his own sperm to inseminate patients without their knowledge or consent.
That's beyond unethical.
Yeah.
It's a chilling reminder of the potential for abuse within the medical field. The violation of trust is just unimaginable. It's a dark side of DNA testing that we can't ignore. And then there's the story of Keanu Reeves, who faced a really bizarre accusation.
Oh, what happened?
This woman claimed he was the father of her 4 children.
Oh, wow. Did she have any proof? Nope. She demanded millions in child and spousal support, but a DNA test quickly debunked her claims, thankfully. Talk about dodging a bullet.
That's scary. It's a good thing DNA testing can provide that level of certainty, especially in situations where someone's trying to take advantage.
Yeah.
Speaking of taking advantage, I think I remember reading about Bill Cosby and a paternity dispute as well.
Yeah. He was accused of fathering a daughter out of wedlock, and the woman involved tried to extort money from him, like a $40 million settlement.
Wow, that's a lot of money.
Right. Cosby offered to take a paternity test to clear his name.
Makes sense, if he was innocent.
Exactly. But she refused.
Why would she refuse?
I guess she knew the truth wouldn't be on her side. She ended up facing extortion charges because of it.
It really makes you wonder about people's motives sometimes, right?
Hmm.
DNA testing can bring clarity, but it can also expose hidden agendas.
It's a double-edged sword, that's for sure. But hey, let's end this part of our deep dive on a positive note, shall we? Remember we were talking about family connections earlier?
Yes, with Janine and Jen.
Well, what about best friends who turn out to be brothers?
Oh, tell me more.
Walter McFarlane and Alan Robinson. These two were best friends for over 6 decades.
Wow, that's a lifetime.
They met in high school, remained super close throughout their lives. One day, they both decided to take DNA tests, just out of curiosity, you know?
Yeah.
And boom, they discovered they were brothers, sharing the same biological mother.
That's incredible. It's like a real-life fairy tale. It warms your heart to know that kind of connection exists.
Yeah.
It really is amazing how DNA can bring people together like that. It's like some invisible force connecting us across time and distance.
It makes you wonder about all the other incredible stories out there, just waiting to be uncovered. But with all this talk about DNA testing, we gotta talk about the elephant in the room.
The elephant in the room.
The ethics of it all. I mean, we're talking about some seriously personal information here.
You're absolutely right. We're essentially handing over a blueprint of our genetic makeup when we take these tests.
Exactly. And that raises a lot of questions about privacy, right? Like, who has access to this information? What are they doing with it? Could it be used against us?
Those are all valid concerns. And honestly, there's no easy answer. We're still figuring out a lot of this stuff as a society.
So what are some of the specific concerns that come up when we talk about DNA privacy?
Well, for starters, there's the issue of data security. These companies are collecting a massive amount of sensitive genetic data, and it's crucial that they have robust security measures in place to protect it from breaches or misuse.
That makes sense. I mean, nobody wants their DNA information falling into the wrong hands.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And then there's the question of who has access to this data. Can it be sold to third parties? Can law enforcement agencies request it? These are all things we need to be thinking about.
It's a lot to wrap your head around. It's almost like the technology is advancing faster than our ability to understand all the implications.
That's a good point. We need to be having these conversations now, before it's too late.
So what about informed consent? I mean, do people really understand what they're agreeing to when they send off their DNA sample?
That's another crucial point. Informed consent is essential. People need to be fully aware of how their information will be used, stored, and potentially shared. They need to know the risks and benefits before making a decision.
It sounds like we need some clear guidelines and regulations to ensure that DNA testing is being used responsibly.
Absolutely.
Hi.
We need to strike a balance between promoting scientific advancement and protecting individual rights.
It's a delicate balance, for sure, but it's one we need to get right.
I completely agree.
And it's not just about privacy and consent. There's also the concern about genetic discrimination.
Right, the idea that someone could be denied employment or insurance coverage based on their genetic predispositions.
That's a scary thought. It feels like something out of a dystopian novel.
It's a legitimate concern, and it's one that we need to address proactively. We need to ensure that people's genetic information isn't used against them in unfair or discriminatory ways.
It seems like there's a lot of potential for good with DNA testing, but also a lot of potential for harm if it's not handled carefully.
That's a great way to put it. It's a powerful tool with both incredible potential and significant risks. We need to approach it with a sense of responsibility and awareness.
Well said. Okay, so we've talked about privacy, consent, and discrimination. What are some other societal implications we need to consider?
One thing that comes to mind is the potential impact on family dynamics. DNA testing can reveal unexpected relationships, which can be both wonderful and incredibly challenging.
Like finding out you have a half-sibling you never knew about.
Exactly. Or uncovering family secrets that were buried for generations.
That could definitely shake things up.
It could. It's important to remember that DNA testing can have a ripple effect, impacting not just the individual who takes the test, but also their family and loved ones.
It's like opening a Pandora's box sometimes.
In a way, it is. It's a journey of discovery that can be both enlightening and emotionally complex.
So what advice would you give to someone who's considering taking a DNA test?
I would say go into it with an open mind and be prepared for the unexpected. Do your research, understand the potential risks and benefits, and have a support system in place because you never know what you might find.
That's great advice. It sounds like DNA testing is not something to be taken lightly.
It's definitely not a decision to make on a whim. It's a powerful tool that can have far-reaching consequences.
Well, I think this conversation has given us a lot to think about. It's clear that DNA testing is much more than just a fun way to trace your ancestry. It's a complex issue with the potential to reshape our understanding of ourselves, our families, and society as a whole.
I couldn't agree more. It's a fascinating field that's constantly evolving, and it's one that will continue to challenge us in the years to come.
Well, deep divers, we've journeyed through some fascinating twists and turns in the world of DNA discoveries.
We really have. From reuniting long-lost siblings to uncovering family secrets that were buried for decades.
Those stories, like Janine and Jen finding each other after 40 years, they just remind us of the power of family, even when it takes unexpected forms.
And Sigrid Johnson discovering her heritage was completely different from what she'd believed. It really makes you think about the nature of identity, doesn't it?
It does. And then there are those cases that remind us of the potential downsides of DNA testing, like the fertility doctor who used his own sperm.
It's a stark reminder that with any powerful technology, there's always the risk of misuse.
We can't shy away from those tough conversations about ethics and responsibility, especially as DNA testing becomes more common.
Absolutely. We need to make sure these advancements are used for good and that we have safeguards in place to protect individuals.
We also saw how DNA testing can play a role in legal situations, sometimes bringing justice, sometimes revealing uncomfortable truths.
It's a powerful tool, but it's important to remember that context and intent matter. A DNA test alone doesn't tell the whole story.
So as we wrap up this deep dive, I want to leave our listeners with a final thought.
A thought to ponder.
Yeah. Imagine a world where everyone had access to their DNA information. How do you think that would change things?
That's a big question. It could lead to incredible medical breakthroughs, stronger family connections.
But it could also raise new ethical dilemmas, privacy concerns.
Exactly. It's a future full of possibilities, both positive and potentially challenging. It's up to us to shape that future responsibly.
I think that's the perfect note to end on. It's clear that DNA testing is more than just a trend. It's a force that's reshaping our understanding of family, identity, and even our place in history.
And this is just the beginning. Who knows what amazing discoveries and complex questions await us as we continue to unravel the mysteries of our DNA.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive, everyone. Until next time, keep exploring, keep questioning, and keep those DNA discoveries coming.